Hey everybody, it's Webby. Welcome back to another video. This week I've been lucky to drive around in this 2022 BMW M240i, and in today's video I'm going to show you around the car, tell you my thoughts about what I've experienced in the week I've been driving it, but we'll also take it for a drive, and you can sort of see what it's like, and I can tell you my opinions and thoughts and certain aspects of the way the car drives, the functionality of a lot of the technology on the car. Plus my opinion on the looks and the design of the car as well. So we're going to start on the outside because obviously that's the obvious place to start. Then we'll jump inside, have a look at the cabin, then take it for a drive, and yeah, that'll be the end of the video, I guess. So let's get started on the outside, as I said, and look at the exterior design. I have to start by saying I actually do really like the look of this car. I think it's one of those cars, like a lot of cars these days, that's very sort of sensitive about what colour you have it in. I actually really do like this Brooklyn grey colour, particularly when you've got the red leather interior, which you'll obviously see a little bit more of in a minute. The only thing I don't like is where you've got these black sections down the bottom. I think it's too deep. It's the whole of the door sill, but I think it would be better if it stopped at this crease here. Yeah, I really don't like that sort of really large black section down the bottom of the door. It would almost make me choose this car in black so you can't see it. That's how much I dislike it. But if we come around to the front of the car, I actually like the aggressive styling on this model. I love this sort of big angular section here. Again, the black bit, I can take it or leave it. It's okay on the front, but again, it would be another reason to make me choose a black car. It's got the great looking LED headlights. It's got a normal sized kidney grille. It hasn't got the big sort of tall one like you got on the M3 and M4. Maybe that'll be on the M2 that's coming out later this year. Who knows? But it has got active shutters like the grilles on the front of the car. So it keeps them shut when it's trying to warm the engine up. Opens them up for cooling for the radiator, etc., which is quite a common thing on BMWs these days. I love the design of the bonnet, especially this big sort of power bulge here. It just gives it such an aggressive look and basically says, I've got lots of power under the bonnet, get out of my way. And it has. It's got a lot of power under the bonnet. It's got a 3 litre straight 6 turbocharged engine, which is good for 285 kilowatt and 500 newton meters. And bear in mind, this isn't a big car. It weighs around 1700 kilos. But it's mated to BMW's excellent X-Drive 4-wheel drive system via the ZF 8-speed automatic gearbox. All of that gives a 0 to 100 time of just 4.3 seconds. And as we all know, BMW are always a little bit sort of cautious with their 0 to 100 times, so you probably find it's even a bit quicker than that. Coming around the side, you've got some nice little design cues like the mirrors, which mimic what you'd get on an M3 or an M4. We've got these fantastic 19-inch alloy wheels. They're wrapped in Pirelli P0 rubber. Interestingly enough though, the front tyres are 225 wide and the rears are 255. So although this is a 4-wheel drive version, it's still very much rear biased. Because it's 4-wheel drive on demand, BMW is sticking to the sort of mantra of being rear-wheel drive, and it's the front wheels that come into play obviously as and when you need them. Hence the front tyres are a little bit narrower than the rear ones, which makes a lot of sense. Another thing I really do like is these door handles. I saw these on the 430 Grand Coupe I had recently from BMW, and they're very flush to the door, so they look nice and aesthetically pleasing if you like, but I guess it's also good for aerodynamics. Well, I've turned the car around because the camera was facing towards the sun if I had the camera on the other side of the car, so we can actually see the back of the car a little bit better. So we've got obviously LED tail lights, which actually look really nice. The whole red section here lights up obviously at night, but it's got a nice distinctive pattern, so I think it looks really, really cool. Down at the bottom, we've got these huge exhaust outlets here. Underneath, we've actually got proper exhausts. Then you've got this black section here, which is meant to look like a diffuser, but it's not. But it's a good styling exercise, so that's okay, don't mind that. We've got a nice little lip spoiler on top of the boot lid here. I'd actually like that if it was carbon fibre, especially on a colour like this, so you've got a nice contrast. Or maybe painted black to match the rest of the car. That would probably be better actually, wouldn't it? Yeah, I think paint black to match the rest of that. Yeah, that would probably be the go, I think. Anyway, let's have a look in the boot while we're here. Boot is 390 litres, so it's actually a decent amount of space. It's quite usable as well. They push sort of the trim as far out to the corners of the boot as they can to try and maximise the boot space. And you can fold your rear seats down to maximise that as well, so you can get longer objects through into the cabin. So for a small car, yeah, very practical. And but the best bit about it is the fun, which we're going to get to very shortly when we go for a drive. But next, let's have a look at the inside of the car and have a look at some of the features and bits and pieces in there. But before we do that, if you are enjoying this video, don't forget to give it a like. Also subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, because that will tell you every time a new car review goes live. So now, let's jump on the inside, have a look around. Right, so let's jump on to the inside of the car. Excuse the shadows, it's a sunny day, I can't do anything about that. Keyless entry, obviously, as you expect on a car of this type. When we look at the door trims, there's a couple of things here to note. I do love how the colour of the seats, as you can see the lovely red, matches what you get on the door cards. I really like that feature, and I really like this red, particularly against the Brooklyn grey outside paint finish. These sort of splashes of red here are actually lights. So the little LEDs that light up as you're driving, but they also perform another really important feature. When you open your door at night time, they actually pulse. So a driver coming down the road on a dark night will see this flashing light and actually realise there's an obstruction in the road. So that's a really, really neat feature, I think, and very good for safety. When we come up, we've got the fantastic Harman Kardon sound system. I have to say it does sound absolutely superb in this car. Can't really show you what it sounds like, because obviously copyright of music and bits and pieces, but take my word for it, it sounds fantastic. Anyway, interior. I love the interior of BMWs. I've got to say I'm a big fan. I really do like this red, as I said a minute ago. You can get your normal boring colours like black and that type of thing, but yeah, I just think it suits red because it's a sports car and red's faster. Controls down there for the fully electric seats. They go every which way you want, including lumbar adjustment, and you can also adjust the bolsters there as well. And we've also got on the door memory settings there, so if you've got tall and short drivers, you'll be sorted. Factory sunroof is standard, which is really nice to see, especially on a day like today when it's beautiful and sunny and you want to get some light and a bit of cool breeze into the cabin. Ignore the van that's just driven past, I am, because I'm filming a video. So anyway, jumping. So it's a lovely place to be in here, as you'd expect for a BMW. We've got the lovely digital instrument display just in front of the driver. And as you can see, you've got like your speedo, your rev counter, fuel gauge, etc. And in the middle section, it actually displays your sat nav. So it's just a constant sort of map as you're driving along to show you where you're going. We've got this beautiful leather-wrapped steering wheel. It's probably one of the nicest I've used in the last probably year or so. It's lovely soft leather. You've got the nice sort of sections here where you sort of grip the steering wheel, and the lovely sort of, they're not, I don't think they're metal, they look plastic / metal. Either way, they're pretty satisfying to use the paddles on the steering wheel. Your normal buttons there for your cruise control, and then bits and pieces over that side for things like your volume and adjusting tracks from your music system. We've then got BMW's very well-known iDrive system. Has got built-in sat-nav, but also wireless Apple CarPlay, which works well most of the time. It does work well most of the time. Sometimes it will just get in, connect straight away, absolutely no fuss. Other times it can be a little bit slow to connect, but you know, that's okay, new technology for you and all that. It's nice to see we've still got buttons down here for the air conditioning. Some cars that are going full digital and just touchscreen, yeah, it can be a bit frustrating at times. I'll just move some bits out of the way. We can see down here we've actually got a wireless charging pad. We've got a USB connector there as well, a couple of cup holders, and then a 12-volt socket there. We've then got the usual sort of array of buttons and bits and pieces around this gear stick, which is familiar to pretty much every BMW that I've certainly driven in the last year or so. I don't mind this trim either. And then you've got this little door here which closes, so that's quite a cool feature. You can actually, because your wireless charging pad is underneath that little lid, you can kind of hide everything away, which is really good because it's great for security. If you happen to have left your phone in the car when you walk away, which I have done. We've then got a decent sized cubby hole underneath the driver's armrest, which again we've got another USB connector there. That's a USB-C, so that's the fast charge connector. And then you've got a little light in there, which is quite handy. So yeah, nice bit of storage in there as well. So now we've had a look at the outside, I want to take it for a drive and show you what it's like and tell you what I think of this car when you're actually in driving situation. I'm going to begin by saying it is one of my favourite cars I've driven this year, and for quite a few reasons, which I'll explain as we get going. But yeah, suffice to say, you know, the combination of everything about this car just makes it such a nice place to be, such a nice car to drive in lots of different situations. So yeah, as we get going, I'll talk to you all about what it feels like. Anyway, it's a beautiful day here in Melbourne, so sunny's on. Let's go for a drive. So to start off with then, it's just such a nice, easy car to drive. Although you've got all that power under the bonnet and everything else, when you're just in your standard comfort mode, which you choose by the buttons down here, by the gear stick obviously, like you do in all other BMWs, it's just such an easy, sort of comfortable, cruisy type of car to drive around in. You know, it's not one of these cars that you have to drive hard just for it to sort of behave normally or, you know, get the best out of it. It's very much one of those cars that will just put it along through, you know, city traffic, and it's quite happy to do that job. But at the same time, you flick a couple of switches and put it into angry mode, and it responds like nothing else. It's yeah, it's kind of a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde car, which is great because, you know, you don't always want to be driving the car at 100% absolutely everywhere you go, because, you know, one, it would get a bit tiring, and you'd probably look like a bit of a dickhead driving around like a racing driver all the time. As I did mention earlier, that there's obviously a new M2 coming out, which we think is potentially coming later this year. But you'd almost have to wonder why you need more power than the 285 kilowatt that's under the bonnet of this M240i. Because honestly, you know, that is plenty of power for everyday use and every situation you could ever want. I guess you've got the cachet of saying you've got an M2, but I'd probably save myself a heap of money and buy an M240i. And while we're on the subject of money, in this exact specification, you're looking at $108,000 here in Victoria in Australia, which does sound quite a lot of money, and, you know, it's not small change. But it's all about the driving experience with this car. You know, just how nice it is, the breadth of its ability as, you know, as a daily driver versus, you know, you could go and take it on a track as well and have just as much fun. But yeah, it's not a small amount of money. But then cars are expensive these days, you know, everything's gone up in price due to sort of, you know, availability of cars with COVID and etc, etc. But yeah, $108,000 is actually, if you think about it, it's about the same cost as its nearest rival, which is the Toyota Supra, which, as we all know, is basically this car with a different body shell. So I guess you pay your $108,000 or thereabouts, and you've got a choice. Do you want a Toyota or do you want a BMW? I'd pick the BMW because it's a proper BMW. It's not a BMW trying to be a Toyota. Just my personal preference, of course. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion on that subject, but that's just what I would do. I also like, and this will sound really odd, when you get in a BMW, and it's the same for every one of the press cars that BMW very kindly lent me, it's got a BMW sort of smell about it. It's obviously something to do with the leather that they use in their cars. It's just got that, yeah, BMW smell. I like it. Like I say, I like European cars. I like German cars, just because I've worked for Audi and BMW in the past, so you know I've been very lucky to drive some very nice cars whilst working for those two manufacturers. You do get some nice functionality and little sort of quirky bits in this car though, and it's probably not just for this model, it's a BMW thing. So it's things like you can set the heated seats to come on if it's below a certain temperature outside, and you can choose what that temperature is, by the way. For the first couple of days I couldn't figure out why my heated seats were randomly coming on at certain times of day, but then flicking through some of the settings I soon figured out that actually it was because that setting was turned on that the seats would come on when it, you know, the temperature got down to a certain level outside. And it's little things like that that the Germans put in their cars that just make it nicer to live with. You know, yes, you could go and buy something, a different brand that might be cheaper, it's got just as many gadgets, but it's often how German manufacturers make those gadgets a part of your driving experience that for me does just make the driving experience and the ownership experience it's just on a different level. In terms of ownership and running costs, it's still frustrating that BMW only give you a 3-year warranty where everybody else is at least 5 years. So that's really frustrating. Whether that's something they're going to change, you'd really hope so, wouldn't you? Just because they're lacking behind everybody else still. But it's unlimited mileage, so yeah, that's a saving grace, I suppose. You can pre-buy your servicing plans. I think it's something like $1,700 for 5 years worth of servicing. It's variable, so the car tells you when you need to go in. But that sort of money is pretty cheap for a BMW. You'd normally be expecting to pay, you know, $1,000 a service or something like that. So yeah, it's actually pretty reasonable. In terms of fuel consumption, the official figure is 8 litres per 100, which for the amount of power you've got under the bonnet in the four-wheel drive system, I actually think is pretty reasonable. In the week I've been driving the car, it's currently sat at 8.6, which I don't think is too bad because I've done a lot of town driving. My journey to work is literally down a dual carriageway. There's a little bit of freeway if I want to come home on the freeway. But yeah, largely it's around town. I suspect by the time I get this back to BMW head office in Melbourne later, it will probably have dropped to 8.4 or something. So very, very realistic driving figures. The fuel tank is 52 litres. So based on, obviously depending on how you drive, if you're a little bit sort of heavy footed and you're up around the 10 litres per 100, you're still going to get sort of 500 k's for a tank of fuel. With my driving, I'm probably going to be getting close to sort of 600, which I don't think is too bad actually for, you know, for the amount of power it's got and the enjoyment that you have driving this car. I think it's very respectable. You can put 95 premium unleaded in it, you don't have to put 98 in it. Although I suspect if I owned one of these, I would put 98 in it just because I want to use the best fuel to maximise performance and fuel economy. And also, if you're spending $108,000 on a car, I'm sure you can afford the extra 10 cents per litre of fuel or whatever it costs these days to switch from 95 to 98. Like a lot of cars these days, exhaust noises, if you like, are fairly restricted because of noise emissions and that type of thing in Europe. When you change the car into the different driving modes, it changes a little bit, but there's still a lot of sort of fake noisery pumped into the cabin through the speakers. Although it's not overly intrusive, you can hear it now and again. Which, yeah, I'm not a big fan of noise coming through speakers. I'd rather hear the actual exhaust itself. But I do understand that, you know, the world we live in today, everyone's trying to be a bit quieter as they drive around and that type of thing and not annoy your neighbours. But it doesn't distract from the driving experience because it's still an absolutely fantastic car to drive. It would just be nice if we could have a little bit more noise, please, BMW, or all the people that make up the rules of how boring cars have to be these days. As I said earlier, I've been lucky enough to drive this car for the week. I've got to take it back to BMW today. But if you own one of these, or if you're thinking of buying one, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the car, or your comments, or any questions that you've got about it. Stick them in the comments section below. It's always nice to hear from people who own these, these types of cars that I review, or if you're thinking of buying one. If you've got any questions, I can always tell you what my experience was like in a bit more depth via the comment section. So feel free to put your comments and questions below. I'd always come back and answer them, as I like to sort of give my thoughts on the cars that I've been driving. So there you go, that's my review of the BMW M240i. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I've certainly enjoyed my week with the car. As I said, it's probably been one of my most favourite cars this year to drive. I just love the smoothness of the engine, how quiet it is, how comfortable it is, how easy it is to drive. But then you can also put it in sport mode and have an absolutely barrel of laughs with this thing. It really is a Jekyll and Hyde car. As I said probably in the video, if you've got any questions on the car, please put them in the comments below for me. I'll come back to you as soon as I can with any answers or opinions or whatever. If you've enjoyed the video, give it a like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Also hit that notification bell to find out when the next video goes live. Also got to give a shout out to my customer Dave Williams. Gave me some very lovely t-shirts. Got this black one, got a white one as well, so big thanks Dave. Hope you're watching. That just leaves me to say thank you for joining me for this video today. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next one.